Hey guys, I'm Aaron Morales. Welcome to our first ever interview for Trailblazers and Transformers with the U.S. Department of Energy Alumni Network. This is a fun new project that we're starting with the comms working group that we have at the network, where we're wanting to tell the stories of our alumni community and those who might be the unsung heroes of some truly great work that took place behind the scenes while they were at the department. I'm joined by my co-host, former comms director for EERE, Liz Penniman, staple of the department, who was there for 15 years, also doing fantastic work in that span of time, who was also helping lead the comms working group as one of the main captains and faces of that work happening at the department. Liz, how you doing?
Aaron, I'm great. It's a Thursday night. It's our first ever vibe sesh with Maya Harris Cameron. We are happy to have you here, Maya, our first Trailblazer and Transformer. Maya has over 20 years of experience in federal legislative strategy, congressional appropriations, and interagency coordination. She's worked in multiple roles at the Department of Energy, which we will get to later, plus roles at the State Department. Maya, how you doing? We're happy to have you.
Hey.
I'm so happy to be here. I love the DOE Alumni Network. I loved my time at DOE. I love still being able to be associated with the Alumni Network, and I love my career in government service. And I love what I'm doing, now that I've moved on. So I'd love to talk about all of that with you guys tonight.
I want to get to your work at the department and everything that you've done there. I want to talk about what you're doing with the network now, what you're doing in your personal capacity now too, doing great work still. But before we get to that, I want to walk it back before you took the oath of the department.
All right, before the oath, well, I've taken the oath more than one time. I took the oath for the State Department, where I was a Foreign Service officer, served overseas. First post was the U.S. Embassy in Algiers, Algeria, where I was the Assistant Public Affairs Officer.
Nice.
And then I did my consular tour on the visa line in Montreal, Canada, at the consulate there. Then I was on the desk, the Tunisia desk, and I did counterterrorism and counterproliferation programming at the State Department. And then after that, I was in Sub-Saharan Africa office as the Angola and Swaziland lead. And so I put together for former Secretary Hillary Clinton the U.S.-Angola partnership dialogues. And after that, because Angola was such a prominent oil producer, that's how I started working with DOE initially, with the International Affairs Office. And so after those strategic partnership dialogues concluded, that's when I made the switch over to DOE's Office of International Affairs. It was a ride. So I had over 8.5, almost 9 years at State before I came to DOE, and I did over 15 years at DOE.
Wow. So you just went through a very lengthy federal resume. What inspired you to join public service and become a public servant?
My gosh. Well, I guess like many young, ambitious people, I wanted to run for public office.
You
There we
still
go.
And I knew that I wanted to do some service overseas. I looked into the military. I looked into the Peace Corps, but then when I looked into the Peace Corps, and they were like, you can only take 75 pounds. I was like, I have shoes that would fill that. I was like, that's not it. But then, I was actually interning at the Department of Interior at the National Historic Landmark Survey and the National Register of Historic Places. So I actually was interning as an anthropologist in the Department of Interior, and there was a job fair. And that's how I really kind of connected with the State Department. Wanted to be, thinking about public office. And then, when I went overseas, it was great at the time. Former Secretary Colin Powell, he was there. He had joined Howard as kind of like an advisory role, and he started under Secretary Powell. He'd started the Diplomatic Readiness Initiative it was an initiative to ensure that the diplomats, the faces that you see overseas, kind of matched demographically the faces that were that you see in the United States, you see in Americans. So he, it started this Diplomatic Readiness Initiative, and he started the Diplomatic and Residence Program. And I graduated from Howard University University. That was one of the first sites where they posted diplomats in the university to kind of like educate and encourage people to pass the foreign service exam. So I saw him there. And then I saw him, he actually swore in my A100 class, which is the orientation class for the State Department. So I took the picture with him. I'm like in the second row. I should have brought the picture with me and showed you. But then he visited Algiers when I was there. And I remember I was the site officer for his press conference. And I remember I worked that staff. I mean, I worked like they knew everything. I was on site for like 2 weeks. And I knew everybody from, the manager of the hotel down to like the serving staff. And I remember I was in charge of that press conference. And they said to me, I got a call from the advance team from the State Department. And they were like, Maya, don't panic. And that doesn't start. Don't panic.
Makes you panic.
Immediate heartbeat, like,
The foreign minister wanted to appear with Secretary Powell at the press conference. But we only had one podium. We only had one of like everything. And it had to change. So we needed 2 of everything immediately now. And they were in the limos on the way to the hotel. But because I had done that groundwork, because I knew everybody down to like the chambermaid staff, my staff was so ready, they got it together.
Nice.
The foreign minister and the Secretary Powell went on at the same time. And this is, what happens. Because he was speaking French and Powell was speaking English and there had to be translation, it didn't like make the American news. And that was something that would happen. Like, things get eclipsed from history because of spheres of influence, because of the French language barrier. And so, I was like, man, my parents aren't going to see this. No one's going to know about this. But the cool thing about this story is that we were all lined up at the tarmac at the airport in Algiers and Powell walks by. And I told myself, I was like, I've met him several times. I met him at Howard, met him when he swore me. He's going to remember things. They were like, no, he's not going to remember. He's walking past with the ambassador. He's walking with the foreign minister. And he's walking past and he stops as he passes me. And then he backs up and he starts shaking my hand. And I was like, oh my God, Secretary Powell is shaking me. And he was like, you're one of our new junior officers, aren't you? Oh, yes, sir, I am. Then he looked at me and then he said, I met you when you were at Howard University. And I was like, oh my God! In my mind, I'm keeping it together because the ambassador for me, everybody's looking like, why is he stopping to talk? Like, oh my God. Like, sir, you did. He just looked at me and said, good job. And then he just got up and he walked right up those stairs out of that plane. The plane took off. I swear, it took off into the sunset. It was like the moment of my life.
As a young professional, that is like
I was 22.
What leadership too, to remember someone from.
I know it was just. I mean, but that was the thing, when you served in the government and serving Republican and Democratic administrations, and you had great leaders on both sides.
Great
leaders on both sides.
So you've had an extensive career, but you went. I think you said you started at DOE. You were in international. When I worked with you at DOE, you were with legislative affairs.
Yes, but I think by that time, so I started with DOE, and we did an energy dialogue with Angola. I worked with Secretary Moniz, and Secretary Moniz was the secretary who worked on the U.S. Africa Energy Ministerial, and that was a wonderful event. We had, I think it was 48 of 54 African countries represented in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I feel, one of the things that I feel I contributed heavily to was we could not get at the time, DOE couldn't figure out how to get as many African countries there. And I was there in the International Affairs Office, and I said, well, you have to have a country cable. You have to have a cable directing the ambassadors in the field to take action. If you don't, then they're not going to take action. They're not going to demarch the capitals and ask that the foreign minister of those countries represent, or the appropriate official represent at the African Energy Ministerial. So I feel like I contributed to that, to making that a successful event in that way. Okay, so the next thing I'd say NNSA. I'll tell a story that I thought of for NNSA. So one, I will just say that I love the crew that is still in NNSA Congressional. They feel like
Nice.
family to me. So, like, when I
That's
talk
awesome.
about Cynthia Tomboulian, the director of Congressional Affairs, let me just tell you, she worked her way up from a contractor secretary at the front desk, and she is now the director of Congressional Affairs.
Let's go,
That is,
Cynthia.
yes. So that is, and I'll just say, and I love her, and I hope that she watches this. But like that sort of tenacity, that sort of, and for NNSA to promote somebody
Yeah.
from within and, be with them on their professional journey as they go, they attain their professional goals. That was the Department of Energy and NNSA at its best. That was the department at its best. And
That's
I just
awesome.
really love that. And Jason Miller, the Dash 2. Love you guys. I love that is my like family. If I was gonna go back to any place in
That's
the
who you go back
department,
to.
that's who I would go back to. We had budget briefings, and I remember the Hewed and Sued clerks, so the House Energy and Water Development and Senate Energy and Water Development clerks, they had, we had gone through the budget briefings, and it was CTCP, so it was Jay Tilden who became the director of intelligence, his old group, where they said wanted helicopters in addition to fixed wing planes, okay, for the
Mm.
aerial measuring system. So anybody who knows NNSA knows that they have radiation monitoring over events like the Super Bowl or presidential inauguration. So, we actually have like a fleet of planes. We do.
DOE
Yes.
and is
Like,
yeah.
yes. And the fixed wings are housed at Joint Base Andrews. And so, but the rotary aircraft, both the Hewed and Sued clerk, Jay was not there. They were not there that day when we did the budget briefing. They were both like, we don't need those. You guys are fine. What we did was NNSA's public affairs team teamed up. I teamed up with them. At the time, there was a contractor named Fiza, and they were like, okay, then what we're gonna do, and this is something that we specialized back in the day. We're gonna get a bus of the staffers. We're gonna take them out to Joint Base Andrews, and we're gonna have like a reception, and we are going to do an event where they, the staffers get to go into the planes, talk to the pilots, see them on the ground, and hear about the importance of what they do. And so, so we planned this all out. We're trying to get congressional speakers. And we actually had one, it was Ron Estes of, I believe, Kansas, who showed up. So we actually had a congressional speaker. So all the press releases, had Lisa Gordon Haggerty, who was the administrator at the time. It had that there was a congressional speaker. And we beat back that.
Got the
Yeah, you did.
planes. You're welcome, Super Bowl. You're welcome, inauguration.
Protected.
But it was all about everybody working together. Jared Hatch, who's a CFO right now. I love you, Jared. At the time, he's what, deputy for external affairs now, or he's like leading. He's definitely leading the external coordination team right now, and he was very high up at NE. He was a fellow at the time, and he was on site with me the whole time, and he knew those people at that front gate. They weren't going to let the bus full of congressional staffers in, and but he knew. It was just like the same thing with the Powell. Like he was like, this is my job, this is my post. I'm gonna get these staffers through. But it took all of us working together to have this event, and he did a great job. And that's what we did at DOE. Think about government work. None of us did any of it. None of us do any of it alone. We all work together, and it's our job to be, I don't want to say faithless, but to make our principles look good. Like that was Jay's event. That was Administrator Gordon Haggerty's event. That was, and so I was sweating, not because I was like, oh my God, I'm going to look bad. It was like, I want the administrator to look good.
I think what's cool is you've been calling out like all of the invisible work that federal employees do. And like even shouting out NNSA, no one even knows NNSA exists for a good reason. But at the same time, like the work that like is done at the Department of Energy that like people have no idea. And some of the things that like, and that's the, like Aaron said, it's a job of a public servant, but like, it's so cool. You've got all of these stories and all of these people you're bringing up that like are doing incredible things for the American people behind the scenes. And like, you're just telling a story. Want to jump into fun stuff?
Chips and queso or chips and guac?
Wait a second. You don't remember. It's definitely chips and queso.
Okay. So one of the questions that we have here also is, if you had a walk-up song, and now we know at what event it's going to be at, what's your walk-up song?
Oh my God. I can't believe I'm going to say it. I'm really going to say this.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
All right. It's Lose Yourself by Eminem.
That's a classic.
Yeah, like, but like in my head before any job interview, before any,
Stop.
like, I'm like in my head, like, because, and that's actually, I translated that song to like pass my language exam to go to Algeria. So like I had to like translate, like you have to pass a language exam to foreign service. So
that's
I
why
was
it
like,
tested so
and they
hard.
were
You
like,
talk so
all
fast.
right, let's send her.
What's advice, or what advice you have to somebody who might one day take that oath that we talked about earlier, where you've taken multiple oaths, and maybe at the department? What's the advice that you want to give to them?
Well, for students, I would say applying on USA jobs is like the hardest path. What you want to do is you want to go in as like a fellow, stay in school, apply, go through the fellowship programs where, you can prove yourself while you're getting your degree. And then, I'd say that the pathway is like way easier than trying to apply cold on USA jobs. And then, you try out, it allows you to, try out different offices, different agencies. I mean, that is, if I had to do it, I took the foreign service exam, and so I didn't go through like the USA jobs path. And I would suggest that whether, however you can get in as a student, that's what you need to do. And if you need to go back and get another degree, then it's probably easier than applying cold off of USA jobs. And I think that would continue to be true for a long time.
Okay, we're going to switch gears one more time to talk about the DOE Alumni Network. Maya, you are considered a super volunteer. If you could describe the DOE Alumni Network's vibe in one word, what would that word be? And follow up to that, why do you like being a part of the network? One word.
Oh, one word to describe the alumni?
One word.
Valuable?
Okay. I thought you were going to go.
We'll take it.
Go with family. All those shout outs you gave. Reunion.
Honest forever, Liz.
I wouldn't say I mean, family is a wonderful word. So like, I'm going to say valuable because it's not, it's also, I mean, one of the biggest things is the professional networking, right? And that's valuable. Whether you have moved, however you have moved on, knowing where your former colleagues are is going to be valuable.
Yeah.
I was recently asked, well, what value would it be to somebody who, didn't take the fort? It's just about professional, it's just about like finding another job, or but it's not. As on the membership committee, I have interviewed people who are in all different kinds of roles now. And it's just so, in the work that they're doing, we can all build off of that, and we can all continue to grow.
Awesome. Well, Maya, thanks so much for taking time. Congratulations once again on being nominated for our first Trailblazer and Transformer for this project that we have. I mean, really going through the unsung hero nature of public service. Obviously, you've done such an incredible job and continue to do great work. And we thank you for everything that you're doing for the network and for the community, and just bringing people together and being that super volunteer. Any final words?
I think about like family, though, all the offices that I served in. All right, that's the truth. And I'm gonna say Congressional is my heart. But I loved working in international affairs. I loved working at CFO. Katie Donnelly, you're still out there, budget director. There's so many people, my crew at DOECI that are still there. Lisa Patterson. There's so many people I could say, and you guys really are so important to me. And I miss seeing you every day. I miss being able to just grab a coffee. But thank you for supporting me. And, as I made the transition to, the private sector, and, I was getting advice. I was getting people talking to me, people coaching me, people supporting me when I was looking for a job. And those people are still there for me now. And I miss you and love you all.